A federation, also known as a federal state, is a political entity characterized by a union of partially self-governing states or regions under a central government. In a federation, the self-governing status of the component states, as well as the division of power between them and the central government, are typically constitutionally entrenched and may not be altered by a unilateral decision of either party, the states, or the federal political body. The governmental or constitutional structure found in a federation is known as federalism. It can be considered the opposite of another system, the unitary state. Germany, with 16 Bundesländer, is an example of a federation, whereas neighboring Austria and its Bundesländer was a unitary state with administrative divisions that became federated, and neighboring France by contrast has always been unitary. Federations may be multi-ethnic and cover a large area of territory, although neither is necessarily the case. The initial agreements create a stability that encourages other common interests, reduces differences between the disparate territories, and gives them all even more common ground. At some time this is recognized and a movement is organized to merge more closely. At other times, especially when common cultural factors are at play such as ethnicity and language, some of the steps in this pattern are expedited and compressed. The International Council for Federal Countries, the Forum of Federations, is based in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. It helps share best practices among countries with federal systems of government, and currently includes 9 countries as partner governments. History. Several ancient chiefdoms and kingdoms, such as the 4th century BC League of Corinth, Noricum in Central Europe, and the Haudenosaunee Confederation in pre-Columbian North America, could be described as federations or confederations. The Old Swiss Confederacy was an early example of formal non-unitary statehood. Several colonies and dominions in the New World consisted of autonomous provinces, transformed to federal states upon independence. The oldest continuous federation, and a role model for many subsequent federations, is the United States. Some of the New World federations failed. The Federal Republic of Central America broke up into independent states 10 years after its founding. Others, such as Argentina and Mexico, have shifted between federal, confederal, and unitary systems, before settling into federalism. Brazil became a federation only after the fall of the monarchy, and Venezuela became a federation after the Federal War. Australia and Canada are also federations. Germany is another nation-state that has switched between confederal, federal and unitary rules, since the German Confederation was founded in 1815. The North German Confederation and the Weimar Republic were federations. Founded in 1922, the Soviet Union was formerly a federation of Soviet republics, autonomous republics of the Soviet Union and other federal subjects, though in practice highly centralized under the government of the Soviet Union. The Russian Federation has inherited a similar system. Nigeria, Pakistan, India and Malaysia became federations on or shortly before becoming independent from the British Empire. The Forum of Federations was established in 1999. In some recent cases, federations have been instituted as a measure to handle ethnic conflict within a state, such as Bosnia and Herzegovina and Iraq since 2005. Federations and other forms of state. Federations, the component states are in some sense sovereign, insofar as certain powers are reserved to them that may not be exercised by the central government. However, a federation is more than a mere loose alliance of independent states. The component states of a federation usually possess no powers in relation to foreign policy, and so they enjoy no independent status under international law. However, German Länder do have this power, which is beginning to be exercised on a European level. Some federations are called asymmetric because some states have more autonomy than others. An example of such a federation is Malaysia, in which Sarawak and Sabah agreed to form the federation on different terms and conditions from the states of Peninsular Malaysia. A federation often emerges from an initial agreement between a number of separate states. The purpose can be the will to solve mutual problems and to provide for mutual defense, or to create a nation-state for an ethnicity spread over several states. The former was the case with the United States and Switzerland. However, as the histories of countries and nations vary, the federalist system of a state can be quite different from these models. Australia, for instance, is unique in that it came into existence as a nation by the democratic vote of the citizens of each state, who voted yes in referendums to adopt the Australian Constitution. Brazil, on the other hand, has experienced both the federal and the unitary state during its history. Some present-day states of the Brazilian Federation retain borders set during the Portuguese colonization, whereas the latest state, Tocantins, was created by the 1988 Constitution for chiefly administrative reasons. 7 of the top 8 largest countries by area are governed as federations. Unitary states. A unitary state is sometimes one with only a single, centralized, national tier of government. However, unitary states often also include one or more self-governing regions. The difference between a federation and this kind of unitary state is that in a unitary state the autonomous status of self-governing regions exists by the sufferance of the central government, and may be unilaterally revoked. While it is common for a federation to be brought into being by agreement between a number of formally independent states, in a unitary state self-governing regions are often created through a process of devolution, where a formally centralized state agrees to grant autonomy to a region that was previously entirely subordinate. Thus federations are often established voluntarily from below, whereas devolution grants self-government from above. It is often part of the philosophy of a unitary state that, regardless of the actual status of any of its parts, its entire territory constitutes a single sovereign entity or nation-state, and that by virtue of this the central government exercises sovereignty over the whole territory as of right. In a federation, on the other hand, sovereignty is often regarded as residing notionally in the component states, or as being shared between these states and the central government. Confederation. A confederation, in modern political terms, is usually limited to a permanent union of sovereign states for common action in relation to other states. The closest entity in the world to a confederation at this time is the European Union. While the word confederation was officially used when the present Canadian federal system was established in 1867, the term refers only to the process and not the resulting state, since Canadian provinces are not sovereign and do not claim to be. In the case of Switzerland, while the country is still officially called the Swiss Confederation, this is also now a misnomer since the Swiss cantons lost their sovereign status in 1848. In Belgium, however, the opposite movement is underway. Belgium was founded as a centralized state, after the French model, but has gradually been reformed into a federal state by consecutive constitutional reforms since the 1970s. Moreover, although nominally called a federal state, the country's structure already has a number of confederational traits. At present, there is a growing movement to transform the existing federal state into a looser confederation with 2 or 3 constitutive states and/or 2 special regions. By definition, the difference between a confederation and a federation is that the membership of the member states in a confederation is voluntary, while the membership in a federation is not. A confederation is most likely to feature these differences over a federation. No real direct powers. Many confederal decisions are externalized by member state legislation. Decisions on day-to-day matters are not taken by simple majority but by special majorities or even by consensus or unanimity. Changes of the Constitution, usually 8 treaty, require unanimity. Over time these terms acquired distinct connotations, leading to the present difference in definition. An example of this is the United States under the Articles of Confederation. The Articles established a national government under what today would be defined as a federal system. However, Canadians, designed with a stronger central government than the U.S., in the wake of the Civil War of the latter, use the term Confederation to refer to the formation or joining, not the structure, of Canada. Legal reforms, court rulings, and political compromises have somewhat decentralized Canada in practice since its formation in 1867. An empire often includes self-governing regions, but these will possess autonomy only at the sufferance of the central government. On the other hand, a political entity that is an empire in name may in practice consist of multiple autonomous kingdoms organized together in a federation, with the High King designated as an emperor. One example of this was Imperial Germany, or the Russian Empire. Comparison with other systems of autonomy. Federacy. A federacy is essentially an extreme case of an asymmetric federation, either due to large differences in the level of autonomy, or the rigidity of the constitutional arrangements. The term federacy is more often used for the relation between the sovereign state and its autonomous areas. Devolution. A federation differs from a devolved state, such as Indonesia, the United Kingdom and the Kingdom of Spain, because, in a devolved state, the central government can revoke the independence of the subunits without changing the constitution. Associated states. A federation also differs from an associated state, such as the Federated States of Micronesia and Cook Islands and Niue. There are two kinds of associated states. In case of Micronesia, association is concluded by treaty between two sovereign states. In case of Cook Islands and Niue, association is concluded by domestic legal arrangements. Crown dependencies. The relation between the crown dependencies of the Isle of Man and the bailiwicks of Guernsey and Jersey in the Channel Islands and the United Kingdom is very similar to a federate relation. The islands enjoy independence from the United Kingdom, which, via the Crown, takes care of their foreign relations and defence, although the UK Parliament does have overall power to legislate for the dependencies. However, the islands are neither an incorporated part of the United Kingdom, nor are they considered to be independent or associated states. The Isle of Man does not have a monarch, per se, rather, the British monarch is, ex officio, Lord of Man. Overseas territories, such as the British Overseas Territories, are vested with varying degrees of power. Some enjoy considerable independence from the sovereign state, which only takes care of their foreign relations and defence. However, they are neither considered to be part of it, nor recognized as sovereign or associated states. Alleged de facto federations. The distinction between a federation and a unitary state is often quite ambiguous. A unitary state may closely resemble a federation in structure and, while a central government may possess the theoretical right to revoke the autonomy of a self-governing region, it may be politically difficult for it to do so in practice. The self-governing regions of some unitary states also often enjoy greater autonomy than those of some federations. For these reasons, it is sometimes argued that some modern unitary states are de facto federations. De facto federations, or quasi-federations, are often termed regional states. Spain is suggested as one possible de facto federation as it grants more self-government to its autonomous communities than most federations allow their constituent parts. For the Spanish Parliament to revoke the autonomy of regions such as Galicia, Catalonia or the Basque Country would be a political near impossibility, though nothing bars it legally. Additionally, some regions such as Navarre or the Basque Country have full control over taxation and spending, transferring a small payment to the central government for the common services. For example, scholar Enrique Guillén López discusses the federal nature of Spain's government. Each autonomous community is governed by a statute of autonomy, under the Spanish Constitution of 1978. European Union. The European Union is a type of political union or quasi-federation. Robert Schuman, the initiator of the European Community system, wrote that a supranational community like the Europe's founding European Coal and Steel Community lay midway between an association of states where they retained complete independence and a federation leading to a fusion of states in a superstate. The European Founding Fathers made a Europe Declaration at the time of the signing of the Treaty of Paris on 18 April 1951, saying that Europe should be organized on a supranational foundation. They envisaged a structure quite different from a federation called the European Political Community. The EU is a three-pillar structure of the original supranational European Economic Community and the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, Euratom, plus two largely intergovernmental pillars dealing with external affairs and justice and home affairs. The EU is therefore not a de jure federation, although some academic observers conclude that after 50 years of institutional evolution since the treaties of Rome it is becoming one. The European Union possesses attributes of a federal state. However, its central government is far weaker than that of most federations in the individual members are sovereign states under international law, so it is usually characterized as an unprecedented form of supranational union. The EU has responsibility for important areas such as trade, monetary union, agriculture, fisheries. Nonetheless, EU member states retain the right to act independently in matters of foreign policy and defense, and also enjoy a near monopoly over other major policy areas such as criminal justice and taxation. Since the Treaty of Lisbon, member states' right to leave the Union is codified, and the Union operates with more qualified majority voting in many areas. By the signature of this treaty, the participating parties give proof of their determination to create the first supranational institution and that thus they are laying the true foundation of an organized Europe. This Europe remains open to all nations. We profoundly hope that other nations will join us in our common endeavor. Europe Declaration signed by Konrad Adenauer, Paul van Zeeland, Joseph Murus, Robert Schuman, Countess Forza, Joseph Beck and Dirk Sticker, R.M. van den Brink. Europe has charted its own brand of constitutional federalism. European constitutionalism beyond the state. Edited with Marlene Wynne, page 23, Joseph H. Weiler. Those uncomfortable using the F word in the EU context should feel free to refer to it as a quasi-federal or federal-like system. Nevertheless, for the purposes of the analysis here, the EU has the necessary attributes of a federal system. It is striking that while many scholars of the EU continue to resist analyzing it as a federation, most contemporary students of federalism view the EU as a federal system. Daniel Kellerman. A more nuanced view has been given by the German Constitutional Court. Here the EU is defined as an association of sovereign national states. With this view, the European Union resembles more of a confederation. This has occurred as largely informal grants of power to the provinces to handle economic affairs and implement national policies. This has resulted in a system some have termed de facto federalism with Chinese characteristics, which in fact is too far from the federalism idea. Constitutionally, the power vested in the special administrative regions of the People's Republic is granted from the Central People's Government, through decision by the National People's Congress.